Thank you very much for joining us at this session called Smart Seas Innovation in Shipping. So how we are going to continue is that I have a set of questions where I'll address one of you and then we can continue the talk here on. It's quite an interesting session because there are a lot of innovations in shipping happening at the moment, and of course before we begin, there was a hot conversation we had back in the speakers lounge, so I'm looking forward to hear quite some more here. So I'll start with you, Brent. It could be nice if we could have a short introduction of yours, a quick one.
Sure. Well, good afternoon. My name is Brent Sadler. I'm a senior research fellow at the Heritage Foundation in Washington, D.C. But the interesting part and relevant part to today is the last 4 years I've been looking at what a project called a revolution in shipping, looking at how to capitalize on a new comparative advantage, basically taking advantage of several interesting existing and a few emerging technologies in a way that might galvanize government but also corporate interest and investment in this new kind of possible way of addressing shipping and shipbuilding that brings in more players, accessing more markets, and more benefit to more people.
Certainly. Thank you so much. We'll hear more from you in a bit. Dru, over to you if you can just have a small introduction.
Thank you. My name is Dru Kottak. I'm the managing director at a port company in India called JM Bakshi. I'm probably the sole Indian representative out here in this esteemed panel. I think what I would hope to cover today is what we're doing in India in the private sector side, of course, along with the government in the space of new technologies and new energy, shipbuilding, ports, logistics, transportation, digitization, different pieces. So I'll cover the private perspective.
All right. Thank you so much, Dru. And then we have Edwin, Senior Policy Advisor, Ministry of Management and Water Management in the Netherlands.
Yeah, my name is Edwin Kleuren. I'm working on the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management of the Netherlands, Division Maritime Affairs. And I'm responsible for the MOUs Maritime for India, China, Vietnam and Indonesia. And with India we have a very long maritime relation, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jens from the World Maritime University in Sweden, Malmö, very close to us.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Jens Henri. I'm Vice President Strategic Initiatives at the World Maritime University. The World Maritime University is a part of the International Maritime Organization. We are one of their research and education providers, and this afternoon to the session I would like to contribute with a couple of general remarks about the challenges that we have in the shipping and the port sector, specifically in relation to the digitalization, automation, but also resulting from the decarbonization.
Thank you. Siv, Managing Director, Norwegian Electrical Systems in Norway.
Yes, thank you. So I represent Norwegian Electric Systems, and we are a maritime supplier of energy power management system, automation and also navigation systems. And since Norway has the largest electric ferry fleet in the world, I'm very proud to say that we are actually the supplier who has supplied the most systems to the electric ferry fleet in Norway. So that's the contribution I bring here today, the electrification and also the change in the fleet as we see today.
Thank you so much. So getting back to you, Brent, what do you think what will the fleets and the ports in the future look like?
Well, terrific question. I'll start with some of the core fundamental of why shipping exists is that we should never forget that it's to move cargo and to conduct trade. And so you're always going to need to have ports, you're always going to need to have trains and cars and trucks to move that cargo from the pier, and of course you're going to need ships. And a lot of the conversation lately, because of environmental standards on the fuel, is driving a focus in on how to get lower carbon propulsion systems. At the top of that, and I think an inevitable outcome, is you're going to see a return to or perhaps in many cases a doubling down on nuclear power as a propulsion means at sea for commercial. Now, this is not a new thing. It was done in the 50s. The market wasn't ready for it. The Japanese also have all put nuclear power on research vessels. So there's an interesting kind of dynamic where you have global governance that's pushing in this direction. At the same time, you have technological developments in small modular reactors that have a high reliability with a low human management responsibility on it. And they do it in a way that you can access a lot of ports. The ports themselves are expensive, billions of dollars US to dredge and to make cranes and everything else to support these massive ships. I can see a trend that goes in the opposite direction where we diversify and basically segment out the shipping. So still going to have large ships, probably powered by nuclear power, but you're also going to have an explosion of feeder vessels and other means of moving cargo, maybe dirigibles for vertical lift, drones, and much more extensive use of riverine transport. And I think India, as well as the United States, share a common geographic layout for this kind of concept.
Certainly, I completely agree to that one. And then, Mr. Dru, if I ask you, what do you think? How are artificial intelligence, new energy, and the digitalization going to transform the mechanism that Brent just mentioned? And how are the investments in such a technology taking place?
No, I think I've said this in multiple forums. I'll start with AI. I think we underestimate globally how process-rich and process-intense shipping and global transportation is. It's really process-rich. When you're dealing with cargo, you're dealing with manifests, you're dealing with customs, you're dealing with ships and data and different data points. It's even to conduct and carry out this business, there are so many paper processes, there's so many processes across the entire chain. It's tremendous. I think AI will play a massive role in terms of, you'll start seeing a huge advent of AI agents getting created across various nodes, various parts of the supply chain. You'll see a disruption where a lot of existing incumbents who have deep control on these nodes will get disrupted, where you'll see, maybe I see a lot of young people in this audience. You'll see a lot of people coming in, transforming these sectors by creating new processes, new AI agents, which are trained on these large databases that exist. So I think that's the change that AI is going to bring to maritime and shipping globally. Energy transition, I think, is a huge one. I think a lot of it already, is being driven by IMO and for new fuel transition anyway. But I think you'll see a lot of new fuel So I won't talk about shipping. I think there's a lot of experts here who potentially can talk about shipping. But as far as ports are concerned, I think new energy transition in the form of more and more electrification, ship-to-shore power electrification. I think you'll see transitions in terms of tugboats, marine crafts. They will move towards more and more. Anything that's range-specific will look at greater and greater adoption of electrification, especially in markets like India, where you have a phenomenal energy arbitrage. I think there is a huge scope for electrification and adoption of new energies. I think the third piece around digitization, I think it's already underway. I think it's a matter of, let's take a simple tool like single windows, port community systems. I think countries like India have done really well in terms of adoption of this technology, rollout of this technology. I think the game and the secret's going to be is that you have probably 140 maritime nations around the world. Not all of them first world countries. Not all of them, technologically advanced like India, which will need probably low code single window systems which they can roll out, they can templatize in their nations all over the place. And maybe this is just thought for others who are sitting here. But I think digitization has it can be a huge leveler in terms of trade, in terms of efficiency for a lot of nations to catch up with. So I think between these three, I think there's a lot of scope, not just in India, but I would say all over the world in terms of change, and I think the change is, I think, coming upon us very quickly.
Of course, and if we talk about green transition, then we hear a lot about electrification. And what I hear a lot is that digitization is the way to decarbonization. So Siv, asking you, sitting in the chair of, green electrical systems and talking about getting electric, the ports, onshore power and all, how is the adaptation when we talk about the things in practical terms? How open are the ports to adapt to electrification? The ships, we hear they are going electric. What's your experience on that one?
Thank you for that. So, for the ferries in Norway is a part of our road system. We're a long country with the coast, so it's connected in that manner. So when the Norwegian railway system puts out a bid for a new tender, obviously they're also obliged to be a part of the electrification on the port side, so they have to make available, the grid, that it's strong enough so that the ferries can actually charge when they are loading or discharging the cars and the people. But what we do see is that not all places in Norway have have such a strong grid. So what we have done in areas where the grid is not strong enough, there is not enough power, we actually have battery package. So we have containerized battery package, so we charge it up, so when the ferry comes in, it's charged by batteries. Ports in general in Bergen, it's owned by Bergen municipality, in 2019 got a lot of criticism because we had a lot of cruise vessels coming into the port and they polluted a lot. At least it looked like it polluted. I saw the AQI yesterday was more than 1,000 here in Delhi. In Bergen yesterday it was 8. But back in 2019, the city of Bergen said that the port could not take more than 4 cruise vessels per day, and all with maximum of 8,000 passengers, and it had to be connected on shore power. The recent number that we saw now is that the city of Bergen, or the port of Bergen, has taken, I think it's more than 300 port calls of cruise vessels, and more than 50% has been connected on shore power. So my dream for the future of the ports is that they will be less pollutive, obviously, and also more quiet. I was walking in the port of Bergen, and I was amazed about how quiet it was, because all of the vessels that were there were connected by shore power, which is truly amazing. But you need to do that through strict requirements and regulations. What Bergen, is missing out on is the growth, because over the last 4 years, they haven't seen any growth. They're just keeping it steady. So that's the disadvantages when you move ahead with these strict requirements.
Certainly. Edwin, coming back to you, we have heard a lot about transformation happening and all, but how is the role of investments and policy development when it comes to investing in projects like this? And perhaps you have an example or two, or the projects that are already ongoing, you could throw some light on?
Well, greening of ports, of shipping and nature is very important in the Netherlands. And what we have done in the port of Rotterdam many years ago, we create a new area for enterprises and also for the different modes of transport. We call it the Maasvlakte 2. And what we say, we took from nature, but we given also to nature. We created also beaches and also areas for the birds. And we combine all the modes of transport. And that is also stimulated by the Dutch government. And in that field, digitalization is also very important. And what we are doing at the moment is that the Netherlands is a leader for a new project for digitalization to combine all the details from transporters and modes of transport to improve the transport in Europe, but also here in this part of the world in Asia. We have a custom attaché in Singapore, And she's working in the so-called Asian Five. That is India, Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore, and Indonesia. And what my neighbor has said also, it's a form of the single window. And I think that for the future, it is also very important that that system we will combine also not only for customs, but also for the rest of the things for around transport. The Netherlands has also a very long maritime history, and we have an MOU Maritime, a very good cooperation with the Indian Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways, and also with the Inland Waterways authorities here in India. And what we organize every year is a so-called a Maritime Week. So we hope we can organize also in 2025 a Maritime Week, first in Mumbai for maritime affairs, and secondly for inland waterways. Well, we heard today and also yesterday a lot of about the plans from the Indian government to improve inland waterways. So we will do that in Varanasi. And secondly, we have also a so-called joint working group. The first one we had last year during the international summit in Mumbai. And that's special because then the two governments are together to speak about all the topics about maritime. But secondly, we combine that also with a meeting with all the companies. So then we have a direct line from the Dutch companies also with the Indian government.
Thank you so much. Jens, you represent World Maritime University. More commonly what we understand is International Maritime Organization, IMO. And I suppose that several countries are a part of International Maritime Organization. So what do you think, how can like-minded countries learn from each other, and how can we support each other in the vision that we have collaboratively seen? What are the efforts that are being taken, and how is the adaptation of such efforts?
Yeah, I think if we consider, the panelists here have already highlighted a couple of national examples and also a couple of ideas about future technologies that may be involved in shipping. I would say, in principle, and I think this is also highlighted throughout the conference here, we are looking at two areas: the decarbonization of shipping, but then also what will be the effects on shipping and ports in terms of, or as a result of, further automation and digitalization. And if we are looking at Norway, for instance, we already have an example of first almost autonomous ship operating now. If we are considering also that at an IMO level, training for alternative fuels is conceptualized and will be starting by the end of this year. That creates opportunities and challenges for many countries as shipping is transforming. But on the other hand, we only see a few countries participating and contributing to some of the discussions. If you are looking at the autonomous shipping, for instance, you have a few countries which are currently driving this, and they are all in the northern hemisphere. You have countries like Norway, Sweden, the Netherlands, the UK. If you consider also Finland, Korea, Japan, China, all those ships have at the moment trials, but for instance, a country like India at the moment is missing in this discussion. And if we consider with other examples here in the hemisphere, I don't think that we see the infrastructure yet that it requires in order to participate in topics like autonomous shipping. This is an area where collaboration and cooperation is needed. We did a study in 2019 at World Maritime University where we were actually highlighting that there is the risk of parts of the world drifting further apart if technology investments are only done in the north, because that also means that the research is done in those parts of the world. If you think of the 2 million seafarers which are currently working on board ships, we want to equip those seafarers for the next generation of ships. They do not necessarily have to be autonomous. There will be smart ships. And of course, more environmentally friendly ships. Of course, countries which are actively involved in the research of developing these ships and also those fuels, they have a natural advantage because they have the infrastructure, they have the knowledge in terms of the scientific achievements. And I think the big question is, how can this be transferred to other parts of the world? We've heard in this conference the strong ambitions of India, for instance. India has great potential. It was highlighted here several times that Indian ports are belonging to the best ports of the world. If you are looking at the port performance and if you're looking at the best 100 container ports in the world, 9 Indian ports are among those 100 already. The question now is, are these ports also prepared to accommodate more smart ships? And are universities in India actively working on equipping these ports and also helping to build the infrastructure that it needs in order to accommodate those ports? If you are considering that there's about 14,500 kilometers of navigable Indian waterways, that's another opportunity where you can work with automated ships, which are also more environmentally friendly. But also there again, it needs research, it needs investment in the infrastructure. And it was mentioned here several times. If you consider that with all the dramatic changes that we might see in the shipping industry over the next few decades, we are completely transforming this business. We are creating new ships, and that also means that the whole question of gender balance and empowering women to participate in the maritime industry more, also that creates natural opportunities, because with every ship that's new designed, you can design it automatically in a way that it can accommodate more women. But of course it also needs combined efforts in promoting the maritime industry, because at the moment we see that the younger generation also has not that much interest in many countries to become a seafarer. But there is potential. It's a very interesting industry. It's a tech industry in the future. And I think this is the image that should also be more portrayed, so that the next generation is not afraid of actually choosing this job.
Yes, we need more women in shipping, and we need more gender equality. So, Dru, what do you think? What is the role of women today? How many women do we have in Indian ports on the technical side? And of course, perhaps, I know we have a very few ratio of Indian seafarers when we go offshore. So perhaps you can...
No, I think it's obviously we have, as an industry as a whole, we have a long way to go in terms of playing catch up when it comes to making sure we have a stronger inclusion. So I think, let me start by saying that I think in India we are equally behind as every other country. What I can state is that it's actually never been a better time to start addressing this massive opportunity that we can have for greater gender inclusion. Why? It comes back to the same points that I made. I'll give you a small example. We, about 2 months back, we had launched a container terminal in south of India in a place called Tuticorin. And it was inaugurated by the Honorable Prime Minister and the Shipping Minister. And I'm happy to report that we actually started off this terminal with 50% of the workforce being women. Now that's, in my view, probably the highest percentage of women anywhere, any port in the world. Now, how do you do that, right? There are different parts to it. I think the first part is when we actually start digging down and we start speaking to the various port locations, and we start seeing that there's regulation in place which actually doesn't enable women to come and work even if they want to work. And it's not coming from any biased view. It comes from probably a different point in time when we were worried about safety. I think step one, if you take affirmative action, I think the government and policymakers are willing to look at these rules, change these rules. And we've seen that in India. It's a very positive mindset by various port authorities, the ministry, to look at what tweaks are needed to enable this to happen. After we did that, the second part is that you have to take strong affirmative action, and which means saying, no, we need a very high ratio, because that automatically makes, you know, the other gender feel a lot more comfortable in that workspace because there's more numbers of them. But the third one, which is also very interesting, is that with a change in technology, we are seeing that you can start, you know, when we hit the 50% ratio in Tuticorin, our question was, why can't we go to 100? And one of the areas which people were not confident was the transportation link. We've actually looked at electrification of our entire trucking fleet in JM Bakshi ports, which is close to 2,000 trucks by 2027. And when we started studying the change in technology, it's actually, I mean, in my view, electric trucks are gender neutral. They are extremely easy to drive, extremely convenient. And I think there's no reason why we can't see a massive upsurge of lady drivers taking over all these trucks, hopefully. So I think it's a combination of affirmative action from companies, government support, involvement in terms of changing regulation, but also adoption of new technology. If we can combine these three, I think we are beautifully placed, I would say around the world, but definitely in India, we're beautifully placed to take advantage of this because, I think from an Indian perspective, an Indian CEO perspective, that's a talent pool we don't want to miss. And we would do anything to make sure that we create the enabling environment to make that happen. So I think that's probably a little bit of a live example of how we're trying to solve that.
That's very interesting to know. Brent, how's the situation in the United States and the UK when it comes to gender equality and women in shipping?
I can't speak to the UK.
Okay.
And when it comes to the United States, certainly in the merchant marine sector, there's been a few issues at sea that are still kind of being resolved. There have been efforts in this current administration to try to attract more women to join the merchant marine, but the reality is we need more people in stock because the industry, as was mentioned in the session before, there's a growth demand. And in the United States, our maritime industry is just too small, too weak for the nation's prosperity and security. So the only way you're going to grow that is you have to include everyone who is willing and able to be a part of that, and that includes, of course, women, half of the population, a little bit more in the United States than that. So, of course, you're going to want to attract, but also make sure that you have a professional work environment. That has not always been the case at in some of these ships. But also one that is safe and secure, but that everyone has a competency to do the job and to maintain the ships the way they're supposed to. So core principles is at the front. The driver is not an altruistic one. The industry needs to grow. We need everyone that's willing and has an interest in it to join into it. So I would say it's very egalitarian, but driven by necessity.
Certainly, and with SIP, we have a women in leadership already, managing directors. SIP, when it comes to, again, electrification and green transition, we talk a lot about green skills back in Norway and Denmark. That's being hyped up a lot. What do you think? How are women incorporated into that? I see a lot of women driving trucks and buses and forklifts, but is there any special focus for women in particular, or how are we educating our, the youth and the labor forces that we have?
Also in Norway, this is an important topic because, we are in front of a big change. And I think it's accurate to say that we cannot solve today's challenge with the same, let's say, mindset that we have created it with. So if we are going to move forward, we need new voices and diverse voices. So in Norway, the Norwegian Ministry of Trade, along with the Norwegian Maritime Authorities and also the Norwegian Ship Owners Associations, have cooperated on a target that they're going to attract obviously more female to enter the industry, both onshore and offshore. Obviously, we have the same challenges as any other countries because our maritime industry comes from, I would say, men. So it's an untraditional way of life, basically. But I think the more role models that we get showing that it's possible to succeed both in onshore position but also at sea, I think it will make it easier for young women also to see that there is a potential to enter the industry and that there is a career path there. So for our company, we have a target of 40% in all levels. And as you say, why not 100? But I mean, when the starting point is maybe 5%, 40% is a lot, right? And in our company, we need to get a lot of the engineers, electric engineers, but also from cybernetics and machine learning, etc., because we are now seeing more and more need and demand from the industry within electrification, but also within AI and automated autonomous navigation and so forth. However, when you go to the universities, the pool base there, it's not that very good. So we see that maybe we need to change our tactics. There is a saying that if you can't catch a fish, you don't blame the fish. You need to change your technique, right? So I think the idea is that we need to go to the young people at the schools, tell them about the possibilities there, and hopefully that will make them become more aware about the possibilities within our industry, because we need all the young people from 100% of the talent pool to come into our industry.
Thank you. Edwin, when we talk about innovation and development, we need the policies to be in our favor, you know. How is this being seen in the Netherlands? How tough are the policies when it comes to, you know, adaptation to the new technology and the new innovations that are in there? How easy to get the IPAs and things like that?
Well, sometimes it's very difficult to find all the information together. But well, we have the projects and the international projects also. We do it also with the international organizations like the IMO. So I think that's very good, because it's not only information what you get only for the Netherlands, but it must be global. And I think that will be, in the future, I hope that we manage that. So, yeah, what I said, we have a lot of projects at the moment, and we hope that we can combine that.
Thank you. Jens, IMO, that's a huge entity and a huge organization, and every time we hear and we read, it's always the references to IMO that we go back to. So I would just like to hear that in your eyes or in your understanding, how can the large data sets that we have today that are being used for innovation and digitization, machine learning, it's everywhere, can ensure the security at sea and off sea, in the sea, sorry.
That's an interesting question. Well, large data sets are key, basically, because, and I think this is one of the main challenges, this is also discussed in relation to autonomous ships, especially if you think of autonomous ships at the very high levels where in the end, eventually, no human being is on board the ship anymore, and you have only remote control from shore-based centers. And so far, I would say it's realistic to say that the answers have not yet fully been given. This is one of the great challenges, together with the propulsion systems, when you're looking at high levels of autonomy. And this is also one of the reasons why at the moment the idea of a smart ship where you still have some human supervision on board is still the more realistic and maybe the solution that's approaching the maritime in more medium-term solution. But it is clearly that we are working on these large data sets. Big data, in principle, is providing an enormous opportunity in terms of optimization. The capabilities are certainly also there, but again, also here you have the question, who is at the moment investing in this, which countries have the technical capacities and which countries do not. Again, it's always about the infrastructure. If you want to accommodate autonomous ships in ports, you need to have an infrastructure that's able to handle the complex systems that such an autonomous ship represents. So if this ship is coming into the port, it needs the infrastructure on the shore side to make sure that this ship can navigate, eventually be remotely controlled. And therefore, if the security risks still exist in relation to the data exchange between that ship and the shore-based infrastructure, this will always be a hampering factor for that progress. And therefore, I think more development is needed in this discussion. You mentioned the IMO. That's, of course, always the body where regulations like this will be discussed. But on the other hand, IMO is, when you refer to the IMO, you are referring to the Secretariat in London. It's the member states, it's individual organizations with observer status who have to bring the solutions to that Secretariat so that the global community can discuss it there. So, and I think this is how we should see the IMO. This is the meeting place, and if countries like India or if other countries work on developing the technological standards, that's the place to discuss, to share. IMO has quite a significant technical cooperation program that offers support also to individual countries who are struggling in implementing certain of those standards. And I think it's also important not to forget that and to strengthen that ability of the organization.
Thank you so much. So I can see that we have, yes, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up actually on Jens, or your question to Jens on how data is actually shifting the landscape to some extent. What we say is see in the system that we deliver, because we also deliver the navigation and the bridge package. And we have one of the products that we have is called Smart Ship Routing. And with the Smart Ship Routing, you kind of become not that dependent on the operator of the vessel, because we use big data and we integrate it with weather data and currents and what have not, and we try to estimate the best route for the vessel when it's going from A to B. And I think until we have the new energy sources that we need to reach zero, we need to do what we can with the technology that is available today and cut as much as we can. And by using AIS, for instance, and big data and analyzing and integrating with coding, etc., we see that the fleet can actually reduce a lot. And there was a study at the Norwegian School of Economics which actually saw that if we change the way we actually operate the vessels today, and we implemented just-in-time arrival, as they're doing with aviation, a study done on the Aframax segment showed that the fleet in itself could cut 20% of its CO2 emissions. And that's just overnight. However, obviously, we need to change our mindset. So instead of rushing to the ports and tendering notice of readiness and be there on demurrage, we get the slots time. So it's a change. But there is a lot of possibility if we just kind of think differently before we have all the new technology that we need to cut as much as we can.
Thank you, Save. And we see we have last 5 minutes, so as closing remarks, I would just like to ask all of you quickly, what do you think that how can we support each other in creating resilient, innovative and secure supply chains? Just if you have to conclude it in one liner, keeping in mind the short time we have, please.
Yes, one thought. When the IMO and multinational or international organizations are great, but we should not discredit the potential of smaller, like-minded, common interest groups. And like the G7, which is an informal group of nations that come together for macroeconomic and fiscal issues, and sometimes political, there should be room made for a maritime group of nations that have common interests to develop these new innovative technologies, be it smart ships, be it small modular nuclear-powered commercial vessels, and all of the regulatory environment and government kind of subsidies and everything else, all coordinated a group of nations that have that same vision, that same interest. So a maritime group of nations is a means and a tool, a framework that I think could be used right now as new innovations are nurtured and to excite the young to get into the maritime industry at the same time.
Thank you. Dru, would you like to add something?
I think it's, I think simple word, it has to be across the board for, whether it's new energy transition or whether it's work that we're doing towards gender. I think simple word has to be affirmative action. Unless, entities, governments don't start actioning and don't start implementing a number of these programs, we will not be able to start building ecosystems. Small example again is, I would say, our Indian government. We're doing a program called the GTTP, which is the Green Tug Transition Program. And I think it's a massive initiative that the government has done with ports to enable creation of what I believe is both a battery ecosystem, a ship-to-shop, charging ecosystem, and a migration towards green tugs. So you'll end up creating shipbuilding capability, which is specializing in this. You have ports which are ready. So it's affirmative action. It's going out there and saying, okay, we need to get to this point. Let's try an action towards that.
Thank you. Edwin?
Yes, I think the international organizations are very important to speak with each other and to make rules or other things to implement global. On the other hand, I think in the good bilateral relation, what we have, for example, with India, it's very good to exchange a lot of knowledge. And in the future, I hope we can share that knowledge and we can learn from each other. Not only we bring knowledge, but we can also take knowledge here.
Thank you. Jens?
Yes, just maybe very shortly, Brent and others here highlighted the importance of international collaboration, but I think it is also important that you strengthen the national capacities. When you talk about supply chains, that includes shipping, that includes ports, that includes innovation, so that there is the industry involved, there is research. We've heard excellent examples here in this short panel discussion from the Netherlands, but also from Norway, where strong national clusters exist, where all the different stakeholders are working together and where this combined knowledge is developed. And I think maybe also this is something that other countries can follow by setting up also similar national fora, like we are doing here with this conference to a certain extent in the context of India.
Thank you. Sib, you have the last word.
Well, I think I must agree with my fellow panelists here. Cooperation obviously is very important. But in this pool of cooperation, we also need to get the cargo owners on board. I saw that a study done by DNV that if a zero-emission container vessel from China to Europe was implemented, the cost of a Nike shoe was 50 cents. So obviously, we need to get also the one who's paying for the goods transported from all over the globe to be on board about this, because it's not only about the fleet, the designers and the shipbuilders and the ports. It's also about us who's actually ordering all these products going worldwide. So we need to come aboard, everyone.
Thank you so much. And I certainly think myself that we need to collaborate and work more closely together, learn from each other's experiences, be more open to our participation in firms like this so we know what is going on around and how can we together change the world, I would say. So thank you very much for this evening and the session. And thank you to ORF for giving all of us the opportunity to be here and have a great experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. May I request the speakers and the moderator to join us at the front of the stage for a quick family photo, please?